In a game of Dungeons & Dragons, player characters are the heroes of the story. Whether through feats of strength, cunning, or wit, your characters will demonstrate time and again why they're different from most others in your world. Being able to pull off extraordinary acts requires abilities that often exceed what is considered possible by normal standards. These abilities help shape your characters and determine how great they are at certain things. Your characters have 6 abilities: Strength, Dexterity, Constitution, Intelligence, Wisdom, and Charisma. Each ability has its own ability score and its own ability modifier. We'll touch on that more in a bit, but just for now know that the higher the number, the better you are at that ability. Let's examine each ability to get a better idea of how they work. Strength allows you to pick things up and to throw them back down even harder. It's useful for kicking in doors and barricading that same exact door you just kicked in. You can also hold people in place so that your friends can punch them. Some melee classes, like the Barbarian for example, rely on strength for attacking, making it just as important to them as raging is. Well, maybe not as important, but you get the idea. Dexterity is your ability to be nimble and evasive. It makes you better at things like parkour and sneaking around. Finesse weapons like whips or scimitars use dexterity when attacking. Same thing for ranged weapons as well. Classes like the Rogue or Ranger rely a lot on this ability. Constitution measures your character's stamina and total health points, and it comes in handy for the occasional saving throw too. Constitution checks are made to determine things like fatigue, or if your character can still walk after a heavy night of drinking. If you're playing a survival-based campaign where your party needs to rest more and keep track of food or water, etc., then this becomes arguably the most important ability. Intelligence reflects how knowledgeable you are about the world and how easily you can recall and obtain information. This ability can be used for many things, such as a wizard learning more spells, or a detective investigating the scene of a crime. If you want to be the smartest one in the room, this is the choice for you. Wisdom measures how intuitive you are. It allows you to notice things more easily and helps you obtain a sense of understanding about your surroundings. When someone is trying to deceive you, it may not work based on your ability to tell that something's off about them. Perhaps it's the way they're speaking, or the rushed tones in their voice, or perhaps it's just because they look very shady. Charisma, also known as everyone's favorite dump stat. Well, that is unless of course you're a charisma caster like a paladin or a bard. There are some social encounters in Dungeons & Dragons that are just as important as the battles themselves, perhaps even more so. If you prefer talking your way out of conflict or into a promising situation, then this is the ability for you. There's usually a face to every party, and this is the power behind it. Now that you have a basic understanding on how your abilities work, it's now time to generate your ability scores. Your Dungeon Master decides how you generate that score. Some Dungeon Masters use a homebrew method, and others use the resource books. The method I prefer is the 4 6-sided die method. What you do is you first roll 4 6-sided dice, and then you drop the lowest of those 4 numbers. You then record the total number of the 3 dice you have remaining, and repeat the process. You want to do this a total of 7 times, then drop the lowest number of those, and then you're left with your 6 ability scores. Keep in mind, an ability score can only go as high as 20. Once it hits that, it's maxed out. So how do you use those fancy new ability scores? You start by figuring out the ability score modifiers for each of your respective ability scores. Modifiers are the numbers that you add to your dice rolls. In the player's handbook on page 13, there's a chart that shows the ability score modifiers. However, we'll go over that here. There's an array of modifiers, but for our purposes, we'll start with 0, which is the ability score of 10. Why 10? Well, because it's considered average. It's not the best, but certainly not the worst. Going up from 10, you have an ability score modifier of +1, which is at 12 and 13. Between 14 and 15, there's a +2 modifier. From 16 to 17, there's a +3, 18 and 19, a +4, and finally, the last for your characters at least, is a 20 ability score, which is a +5, the highest you can get. There are negative ability score modifiers as well, which affects you when you have an ability score that is below 10. 9 and 8 have a -1. 7 and 6, a -2, 5 and 4, a -3, 3 and 2, a -4, and the lowest ability score you can have, a 1, is a -5 modifier. If you end up having a negative ability or modifier, don't worry too much about it. Having a flawed ability can actually make your character much more interesting and make for some very memorable moments in a campaign. So this was a look at the basics of abilities in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. In another video, we'll be covering how these ability scores and modifiers relate to your skills and saving throws. Let me know what you think about them in the comments below. This video was made possible by the generosity and encouragement of my Patreon supporters. If you enjoy the work I do here on YouTube or enjoy battle maps for tabletop role-playing games online, then please consider becoming a patron by following the link in the description below. Please subscribe to my channel so you never miss an episode, and thank you all so much for watching. Take care.